Good morning, life science students. Welcome to week 3, day 5 of distance learning. This is video lecture episode 5, and we're going to finish off section 2 of chapter 24. Remember, chapter 24 is interactions with life, and we've been covering what is titled populations. So looking at 65, I just have a fun little picture just showing an example from a cartoon movie, but an example of stingray migration. Now, on 66 and 67, we're going to talk about something kind of interesting, and that would be kudzu. In fact, I've titled it The Amazing Kudzu Story, defined as the international gift that turned into a damaging weed. Now, kudzu was introduced to the United States in 1876 at the Centennial Exposition in Pennsylvania. Countries were invited to build exhibits to celebrate the 100th birthday of the United States. The Japanese government, in particular, constructed a beautiful garden filled with plants from their country. American gardeners who used the plant after seeing it there used it strictly for ornamental purposes, meaning just decorative. People discovered that animals would eat the plant and then promoted its use for forage in the 1920s. Farmers were actually paid to plant it during the Great Depression to prevent soil erosion. Unfortunately, now it covers over 7 million acres of the Deep South, and there are a lot of people working hard to get rid of it because it is becoming troublesome. And here's why: it grows over forests and suffocates the trees and plants. It is a very big problem. Sometimes we should consider all that is involved when removing plants out of their natural habitat. In other words, when you take it from one place where it is normally grown to somewhere else, we need to take more consideration. Looking on slide 67, we see some visual representation of what I mean by the kudzu problem that has been occurring ever since and as it is now. Moving into slide 68, let's talk about this term exponential growth. So exponential growth is defined as the population gets larger the faster it grows. In other words, it just keeps growing radically. Instead of linearly going across, it's going and just jumping up. Huge. So the population of the Earth could actually be 9 billion by the year 2050 at our current growth rate. Slide 69, I just have a visual there, once again representing this. And then slide 70, I just have some funny pictures, so to speak. Slide 71 has a video. I may try to upload that. We'll see later. I just don't know if I can. All right, chapter 24, Interactions with Life. Now we begin section 3. Section 3 is titled Interaction Within Communities. All right, so let's talk about the main ideas of section 3. Those main ideas are as follows. 1, we're going to describe how organisms obtain energy for life. 2, explain how organisms interact. And 3, recognize that every organism occupies a niche. Remember, a niche is a special role. So let's talk about a term that will be connected with these concepts as we go through it, and that is social behavior. Social behavior is defined as interactions among members of the same species. We've discussed this briefly already talking about societies. For example, pride of lions, pack of wolves, parade of elephants, and that was in our previous chapter. Just want to make mention of those and remind you about those as well. So let's talk about our next heading within section 3, and that is called obtaining energy. Just as a car needs a constant supply of gasoline, living organisms need a constant supply of energy. The energy that fuels most of life on Earth comes from where? Take a guess. The sun, of course. The sun is a producer, okay? It produces energy. Now keep in mind, producers, we're talking about plants that generate their own energy, use the sun and carbon dioxide to make food molecules for other organisms and on down the food chain. In other words, producers are the foundation, and if they don't exist, it affects the rest of the population. When food molecules break apart during digestion, energy and chemical bonds are released to fuel life processes. Like I said, it's a closed system. I've mentioned this before, and so we're dependent on one another in those regards. Looking at slide 75, let's quickly review the categorizations we talked about from our previous chapter dealing with animals. We have producers, which we've already mentioned, which produce their own energy. We have consumers, which consume other species, other organisms for their energy. And those consumers are broken down into other categories called herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and decomposers. Herbivores being those that strictly eat plants, carnivores being those that strictly eat meat, and omnivores eating both. And of course, decomposers eating dead organisms help reintegrating the nutrients back into the soil. Now, looking at the picture on slide 75, those animals right there, what kind of consumer are they? Can you tell me? And explain why you say that's the consumer they are. You can go ahead and comment in the section if you'd like to while you're writing there, and you can also include in your notes that you'll submit later today. So continuing our review, we'll get into producers. Producers, remember, are organisms that make their own energy molecule by using the sun's energy. Most producers contain chlorophyll, which is a green chemical in the chloroplast required for photosynthesis. Moving on, This is some interesting thing to think about. Rare. Some exotic organisms that are producers actually do not use the sun's energy. This is rare, but it's pretty interesting. What they do is they actually use a process called chemiosynthesis, not the same as photosynthesis, but similar. These organisms can be found near volcanic vents or at the seafloor. Inorganic molecules in the water provide the energy source for chemiosynthesis. Pretty cool. Now, if you look on slide 78, here's just a few examples, some chemiosynthetic producers. Just want you to see what some of these unique creatures look like. All right, let's move to 79. Consumers. So what is it by definition? Organisms that cannot make their own energy. They must consume other organisms to get their energy, hence the reason they're called consumers. Now, the four categories, which we already stated earlier, is one, herbivores. They eat only plants. They're vegetarians. Some examples of those would be rabbits and deer. We then have carnivores, which are animals that eat other animals. For example, frogs and spiders eat other insects. Then we have omnivores, which eat both plants and animals. For example, includes us humans and bears. And then four decomposers consume waste and dead organisms. For example, fungi, worms, bacteria. So we're going to end this lecture today on slide 80. Looking at the picture on slide 80, tell me which one is the producer and which one is the consumer. You can leave that in the comments below, also in your notes. Have a nice day, and I do hope this was helpful. Goodbye.